Now to the shooting war, which seems, at least to us, to be full of mixed messages and confusing signals. After nearly a month of bombing, things are either about to change on the ground or they're not. The Northern Alliance is set to move, or it isn't. The Taliban is finished as a government and is on the run, or is just regrouping. So far, the only clear view we get comes from gun sight cameras, and they're of no help where the big picture is concerned. We'll try and fill some of that in tonight, starting with the latest from the Pentagon and CNN's Jamie McIntyre.
Video taken from a U.S. fighter plane shows how Air Force B-52s continue to carpet bomb Taliban front lines, using the latest targeting techniques to lay even unguided bombs down in a precise pattern. But as the air campaign enters its fifth week, there's still no indication of when Northern Alliance commanders will move against the Taliban.
They've got to make that determination for themselves on the ground, and we are sure that they will. And once they're comfortable, we will attempt to help them again in any way that we can.
In order to provide quicker support to anti-Taliban troops, Pentagon assessment teams are in Tajikistan, checking out 3 old Soviet airfields offered for the possible use of U.S. strike aircraft. That would give the U.S. bombers something they don't have now, access from the north, and would cut as much as 600 miles off the bombing runs that now require carrier-based planes in the Arabian Sea to refuel over Pakistan and spend several hours extra in the air.
Closer access to Afghanistan is good for a lot of reasons. Relief from requirements for a lot of tanking, shorter times for response, faster abilities to turn aircraft around to do resupply missions, etc.
Land bases north of Afghanistan would also allow the U.S. to support a Northern Alliance advance with planes like the tank-busting A-10, specifically designed for close air support of troops on the ground. Pentagon sources say over the weekend the U.S. dropped its biggest conventional bomb on Taliban troops, a 15,000-pound BLU-82. The bomb is so big it has to be dropped by parachute out the back of a C-130 and detonates over the battlefield with devastating force. The Pentagon insists the Taliban are being hurt.
It's been a matter of days in some areas where the Taliban have responded to opposition with fire. My guess is that would be because they're either hunkered down and aren't coming out, or they're not able to fire.
The Pentagon says the bombing will soon become even more effective because over the weekend the U.S. successfully inserted at least 2 more Special Forces teams into the north. There are now 4 separate areas where U.S. forces are directing airstrikes against the Taliban. Jamie McIntyre, CNN, The Pentagon.
On the ground in Afghanistan, the coalition is counting on a band of fighters who ride in tanks and sometimes on mules. They're training hard right now to do what they've been doing for 20 years, take advantage of high tech where they can and no tech where they have to. CNN's Satinda Bindra has spent time with them, joins us again from northern Afghanistan. In your case, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Aaron. After weeks of a military stalemate, there's some signs of some offensive on the ground. Just west of here, Northern Alliance troops are now beginning to push towards the northern and strategic city of Mazar-e-Sharif. And even in this sector, troops are training and preparing for what they call a massive ground offensive.
One day after the fiercest U.S. airstrikes in this area, signs the United Front is training and preparing for an attack. These rookies are getting a crash course in fighting a ground war. Many of these soldiers have never ridden in an armored personnel carrier before, so a battle-scarred veteran teaches them how to get into, out of, and fire from these Russian-built carriers. Waiting their turn, their youthful energy standing out, some very young and ill-equipped soldiers, none old enough to sport beards, but willing to do a man's work and die in war.
Now we have an advantage because U.S. planes destroyed the Taliban strongholds. Their ground troops are demoralized, and we will be able to push back Taliban troops.
For all such talk, the situation along the front lines with World War I-style trenches remains the same.
From these United Front trenches, it's possible to see artillery strikes against Taliban positions about a mile away.
since U.S. planes first started bombing Taliban front lines in this sector about 8 days ago. Soldiers here say some of their guns have fallen silent. But, say United Front commanders, the Taliban aren't leaving. They're busy reinforcing their defenses and preparing for a ground attack from this side. Commanders here believe about 5,000 crack Taliban troops, most of them Arabs, have dug in along these front lines.
These people are feared fighters and have been expelled from their own countries, so they will fight to death.
As wave upon wave of U.S. planes have bombed Taliban positions, those fighters say United Front troops have suffered casualties. These anti-Taliban troops say they want to liberate their country from the terror of the Taliban. As the sun sets across this breathtaking landscape, some United Front soldiers take advantage of the dark to jump out of their trenches and test their enemy's resolve. It's another sign a full-scale ground offensive may be just around the corner.
So everyone is bracing for a ground offensive here, Aaron. When that'll happen, no one can predict. In the meantime, Aaron, we're noticing signs of greater cooperation between the U.S. Armed Forces and Northern Alliance commanders on the ground. Just 2 days ago, a Russian-built Mi-8 helicopter with clear U.S. markings on the left side and a U.S. flag on its right side touched down here in Khojabahuddin. Initially, local commanders here denied it was a U.S. plane, but then they conceded, yes, a U.S. plane did land here, even though for a short while. Back to you, Aaron.
Satinder, tell me why they would deny in the first instance that it was an American helicopter.
Well, clearly because they believe there are local sensitivities. The Northern Alliance feels this is their country, this is their war also, and they should be fighting it. They believe they should get help from the United States, but they do not want a large and commanding presence of U.S. Troops here. They believe their local population could possibly react against that. Aaron?
Satinder, thank you. Satinder Bindra in the northern part of Afghanistan tonight. Nicely done. Coming up, you've heard and seen what he's been reporting. Now, correspondent Nick Robertson on what it's really like to be on the ground with the Taliban. That story when we continue.
From New York, this is Newsnight with Aaron Brown.